Hi, this time I'm going to talk about what makes a good solo adventure. That is, either you are using game books or role playing games that are specific for a solo type of experience. I want to talk about what makes a good adventure in that regard. This is not going to be about solo role playing games. I already did a video about that. If you want more information about my thoughts on that, on solo role playing games, I'm going to put a link in the description below of this video so you can check it out. I'm also making this video because my next review is going to feature a very famous solo adventure that has been converted into a multiplayer type of experience, that is with a game master and player characters instead of just one single player. That is, there is no game master, just one player playing the adventure using a game book or a solo system. This is a solo adventure that has been transformed into a typical or standard role-playing game experience. So let's begin. Throughout the years, I've seen many adventures, and most of them, when it comes to solo gaming, I think they are good, but I have found a few adventures that are not too great. In fact, I'm going to put two links in the description of this video to two negative reviews of adventures that I did not like. There were some salvageable things about them, but just very little when it comes to value, in my opinion, when it comes to a solo experience. Although you could take some things from them and create your own adventures, but still they were quite disappointing when I wanted to experience that on my own. So I will talk about the positives and negatives at the same time, because it's very difficult to separate one from the other. The good thing about a solo adventure also tells you about the bad things about it, or potential negative things. I think one of the best things that makes a solo adventure stand apart from the others is that despite being somewhat railroady, that is, despite having limited options, you still feel like there are many ways to go about the adventure, to go about solving the problem, the mystery, taking on the enemies. I'm also going to put links in the description of this video to positive reviews of solo adventures. Most of them have to do with deluxe tunnels and trolls, of course. Although there are a few negative tunnels and trolls adventures, but those are from third parties, not from, for example, Flying Buffalo. But there are also some other companies like Tavern Master Games that they create some pretty awesome adventures. And in those great adventures, I've noticed that despite having some options that they tell you, well, this happened, this villain appeared, or you're walking down this corridor, or this forest, or this tunnel, what do you want to do? And they give you perhaps 3, 4, or even 5 options, it depends. And even though you choose one, that single option opens a variety of many other ways, many other paths for you to take on the adventure, so it actually feels like you are moving about a map that is an area, a zone. The thing that you want to avoid, in my opinion, when it comes to designing a solo adventure, even though I haven't designed my own solo adventures, but I've played a few of them, as I was telling you, quite a few, several in fact, is that you feel like you are not just moving from point A to point B, you feel like you are actually physically moving your player character in that game world, experiencing the journey. And I think on the negative side of things, some of those paths could be limiting in that a single option takes you either to a dead end or to very limited options. For example, maybe there is an adventure that gives you a choice of picking different doors, and one door either kills you or sends you to two very limited paths that take you to dead ends. So in that way, you're just prolonging the pain of the, or rather the tediousness of the adventure. I think this also has to do with many ways to solve the problem. There are some very awful solo adventures out there where you need to follow a very specific route to get to a good ending, perhaps the only good ending. That's also a negative thing. I would say that there are only perhaps only one or two endings for the adventure. I think there should be several, unless there is a lot of variety when it comes to encounters, and unless the system is quite not as complex. I think it would be better to have several endings, and that's one of the things that I love about those adventures for Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls. There are many ways to take on a single adventure, and even though some endings are better than others, and some endings can potentially kill you, you still feel like you always had a chance. You still feel like you decided to end the adventure right then and there. So maybe the adventure has to do with taking on a very powerful sorcerer. And perhaps you go into the sorcerer's tower or castle or citadel, and you are moving about the different areas, the different zones, and maybe you decided to go to a certain area and you end up in this sort of cell or oubliette or dungeon or whatever, and there is a demon inside of a circle, and now you have to perhaps fight the demon. Maybe you decide to release the demon so that it attacks the sorcerer. Perhaps the demon sends you to another dimension. So there are many ways that many things that could happen depending on what you do, but it always feels like you reached a conclusion based on your on your actions, or and you never feel like you were punished for taking your own path. So in a sense, a solo adventure has to create that illusion of complete freedom. You have to feel as if you are playing with a game master that, although quite severe in that you can actually get your character killed in a trap or in an encounter, mm, if you decide to take a particular course of action, you could potentially be rewarded for it, and you only feel like the only penalty is that you didn't get as much treasure or experience. So, for example, in the case of this adventure of the sorcerer, if you decide to take on the demon or make some sort of deal with it, mm, maybe you end the adventure there and you never get to face the sorcerer, but you still obtain some treasure, perhaps something that was in that same room with the demon, or maybe you defeat the demon and you get experience points and you still feel like satisfied. Maybe you didn't defeat that main villain, but you went through another route. So it always, I think it's better when you have that sense of being rewarded, but you could gain better rewards if you went through another route, because there are some adventures that have some items or choices that they give you no clue as to what that item or that choice is going to do for the rest of the adventure. And it turns out that if you didn't get that item at the very start of the adventure, or if you didn't go a certain path, you are punished for it and you have no way of finishing the adventure. Perhaps you reach this sort of enemy boss at the end, some sort of incredibly powerful dragon or some undead being, and if you did not pick up this item or this amulet, this weapon, you have no choice. You have no way of defeating that enemy. They literally tell you, oh, you don't. If you have this weapon, proceed to the battle. If you do not have it, you cannot defeat the bad guy. The end. And there are some adventures that end like that, and that's awful, especially if you went a long way to finish that adventure. I think I understand why they would do it. That they want to handle the adventure as a sort of puzzle where you have to. Make several it takes several tries to complete the adventure, but those adventures are usually quite long, so it feels really tedious to go through the entire thing again. Even if you have bookmarks or whatever, you still have to go back. Oh, where did I find that item, or where could I potentially get that weapon or tool or artifact, and you have to search through the entire book, so that it's really tedious. I guess that it could be fun for some that want to take notes all the time, but constantly. Because I think it's more comfortable if you're playing the game book or the solo RPG, and you only need to make a map, make some important notes. But if you have to make notes about every single item that you come across, I think that feels a bit tedious. But as I was saying, maybe that's just my own thing, that I do not like it at all, and maybe there are other people that enjoy that sort of bookkeeping. Mm, and I also think another thing that I do not like about that is that it feels that it goes against many good classic fantasy stories. It depends, of course, on the theme. Maybe you're playing some other thing like a sci-fi adventure, or mm, a noir type of experience, or horror. But in many stories, the hero, the protagonist, makes do with what is available at hand. Like in many, for example, in Conan, the one of the perhaps the ultimate um, sword and sorcery hero, or anti-heroes, some would say. He always has a way. If he cannot defeat the enemy, he usually finds a way out of the situation, escaping or pitting the enemy against another enemy. Mm, or maybe he has some knowledge on how to defeat that particular threat. But you never feel like, oh, Conan didn't find the magical sword of who knows what. Oh, he has no chance of defeating the enemy. The end. Imagine what a horrible story that would be if every time any sword and sorcery hero, or low fantasy hero, or even high fantasy, Conan the Barbarian in the case of sword and sorcery, if we go a bit ahead on the technology level, Solomon Kane. If we go towards high fantasy, Drizzt do Urden. Imagine if all of those heroes, if they didn't have a very specific magic item, they would have no way of defeating anything in front of them, and the book would end immediately with the character's death. Those characters are quite heroic because they always find a way, either through sword or sorcery. Even Conan, even though he's not a sorcerer at all, sometimes he has had to rely on some of his knowledge when it comes to occult matters, especially when he fights demons. So they always find a way, and I think that would be great if that was integrated into solo adventures. So again, that's what I love of Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls adventures. And when it comes to, for example, some fighting fantasy game books, although I do not like some of those books. A few of them are really great, but in the best ones, you always have that chance. You never feel like, oh, you didn't find this item, it's over for you. I think another good thing about solo adventures is that although you have limited choices, like I was saying, you always have like go to page number 25, or if you choose this other thing, go to page 103, or go to page 87. Even though you have limited choices, they always paint a huge panorama, or a larger picture when it comes to the area that you are exploring. You always see so many options, those mountains over there, those villages, those cities, many twisting corridors and mazes, and you want to explore all of them. So even though you decide to go through a very specific path, you still want to know what lies beyond a certain zone or a certain area. And sometimes you are surprised. Maybe you think, oh, well, that area is probably not developed in this game book or in this role-playing game, but you take a couple of choices and suddenly you are going through that, into that haunted mansion, or into that mysterious basement, or anything that you wanted to explore and you thought it wasn't going to be fleshed out in the book. So that's really great. I also like it when they break the mold in solo adventures, when you're playing a particular system. For example, in the case of Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls, seriously an amazing game. I'm going to put several reviews, or link. I'm going to link is put some links to videos that could tell you more about those systems, because when it comes to Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls, I never expected in one of those adventures that you can actually obtain a small army. You can actually take those people into your adventures because they are comparatively weak when compared to your player character. you can take them into battle, and they just add, they give you small bonuses to the fight. So it's very comfortable to have a group of warriors fighting by your side, and you do not need to keep track of each of all those warriors individually. You just need to add one or two or three modifiers, and that's it. So that's pretty amazing, and it really surprised me the first time. I think in that adventure you also had your own ship, so it was pretty amazing. Mm. There are so many adventures from Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls that I have yet to play when it comes to solo gaming. I really need to play more of them, and I will review them accordingly when I get the chance to do so. Mm. So yeah, when it comes to specific solo adventures, you really have to feel like you are not playing a solo experience. You have to feel as if it's actually a game master running the adventure for you, or in the best cases, you feel like you are actually there. That's part of the imagination. So yes, in my next video, I'm going to be reviewing this module that when I first played it solo, I thought, oh, I want to know more about that area, or it would be great if you could try this or that. I still liked it a lot as a solo experience, but when I went through the module, when I analyzed the different ways in which a game master could further develop things, I was so amazed. Truly, it's one of the best adventure modules that I have seen. So definitely I will try to bring out that review next week, if not the week after, but I will try to hurry as much as possible because I wanted to bring that out before around December, but you know how busy it got with the holidays. So definitely check it out when I bring out that video. There are probably many other good things about solo adventures. Perhaps in the future I could add like a continuation video, but right now those are the things that come to my mind. But I will also like to encourage you to write in the comments section if you have some other things that you like of solo adventures or things that you dislike. Because I think it's very important, but in the case of those solo experiences, that they bring some sort of sense of coherency and fun, most importantly, to each of those stories, giving you that sense of freedom, that there are many ways to finish an adventure, that you do not need to rely on very specific items unless there is a very good reason to do that. Oh, and here's another important point. I think that when it comes to, if you want to make a really long solo adventure, it would be better to handle it with a simple system. In the case of Deluxe Tunnels and Trolls, it's a very simple system. Oh, and in the case of game books, like fighting fantasy books, they're also simple systems. So you can have pretty long adventures because battles do not feel tedious. There is a game book, I also reviewed it a while back. Let me see if it's around here. Excuse me. Oh, here it is. Here it is. Destiny Quest and the Heart of Fire. The Heart of Fire, yes, by Michael J. Ward. I also reviewed this a few years back, and it's a really awesome experience. There are some negative things about it when it comes to a particular stat. I'm going to put my review of this book in the description. But in general, I think the author did a really good job. It feels a lot like you are playing in a sort of MMO or massive multiplayer RPG. So even though this is somewhat a complex system, you even have like subclasses and all of that, because you have so many choices, so many ways to go and take on the different situations. Even when you actually get to a particular part of the story where you need to follow a certain route, you still had so many choices before that it feels like a very satisfactory sort of adventure. So well, thanks for watching this video, and thank you to all of you that have been sending gift certificates via DriveThruRPG. If anyone else wants to further support the channel, all the information on how to do that will be in the description of this video. So yes, I'm going to try to hurry up and release that review next week, if not the week after. So I hope you will watch it. Once again, thank you for watching this video, and see you later.